right, we got a new analysis over at CNN from Harry Enton about Joe Biden's problems with Latinos. And basically what Harry did over there is he averaged together all of the polls that we have. I think it was like 28 different polls, because one of the problems is a lot of times the Latino vote sample is relatively small, so there can be kind of noisy. But what he looks at is the fact that if you average together all of these results, there is a real downward trend for Biden versus Hillary Clinton's performance back in 2016. So she, by most estimates, won Latino voters by 37 points. Joe right now in these average of polls is up by only 28 points. So significant erosion. In particular, in Florida, it seems that the gap has widened even more than across the country. But Saagar, MSNBC thinks that they know why Biden is struggling with Latinos. They found the problem. It's Bernie Sanders.
Steph, if I was Joe Biden and I wanted to win the state of Florida, I would not be taking Bernie Sanders' advice. Bernie Sanders is the reason why the socialist label has stuck for some voters on Joe Biden. Bernie Sanders is the reason why a lot of South Florida Hispanics in particular are afraid that the Democratic Party has moved too far to the left, why they're susceptible to this messaging from the Trump campaign that they should fear the Democratic Party.
You know, the thing
just
is,
amazing.
I don't even know if that's true. Like, I accept that there's some validity to it, possibly, but all the polling data that we have seen says that it has much more to do with the economic trade message than anything else. And this is what they really can't comprehend, is that somebody would vote in a non-identitarian way, as in like, well, my ancestors fled socialism, and so now I'm here. And yeah, like there's some of that, but as people have been here for several generations, I just don't believe it anymore.
Also, a few things. Number one, Bernie Sanders existed back in 2016 when Hillary Clinton did much better with this group in Florida. So that's number one. Number two, what they will never tell you is not only did Bernie dominate with Hispanics across the country, in particular in places like Nevada, in California as well, did very well in Texas, he won the Cuban vote in the Democratic primary. It was narrow, it was close, but by the polling margins that we saw, he actually won Cuban voters. And this was after, remember the whole, at the end of the primary, the whole like, oh, he said something about Fidel Castro, let's like dig it up and talk about whatever he said 30 years ago and make it into a whole news cycle leading into the primary in Florida. You remember all of that. So what this just serves to remind you is, number one, it does not matter what candidate you run, how moderate centrist they truly are, corporatist establishment they are, the Republicans are always going to tag them as socialists. And number two, no matter what the real reason is, that if Joe Biden loses, like whatever the real reasons behind that ultimately would be, ultimately, even though Bernie has done everything and bent the knee and totally acquiesced and says nice things about Joe and says he's going to be progressive and all this stuff, doesn't matter. They will still ultimately blame Bernie and the left in the end if Joe does lose.
Yeah, it's kind of a hilarious thing when you really look at it, because again, that would only validate what we're talking about here, which is that the core economic appeal of Sanders to Cuban voters would naturally try to transfer over to Trump, even in the reduced Trumpism that we see today. And the media just can't accept that. They're like, blame Bernie, socialism. Blah. It's like, well, maybe Biden should be talking about his Build Back Better plan in South Florida. Maybe he'd be better off. I actually saw something hilarious, which is that the Lincoln Project is getting involved here, and that they're going to be running ads likening Trump to Latin American dictators in order to appeal to the... And so once again, it's the inverse. It's even more, they're like, oh, well, they accept the premise that people are voting Trump or supporting Trump because of socialism stuff. So they're like, no, actually, he's like a fascist Latin American dictator. It's like, again, people are voting on their economic interests or what they perceive their economic interests to be. Maybe try talking to that. It's not that hard.
Look, I talked to a well-known, well-respected Latino strategist who's specifically focused on Florida. And he was like, look, Biden has some things going for him in terms of like a sort of immigrant, a faith and family story that could land with this community on a personal level. And then, why was Bernie Sanders popular with this community broadly, acknowledging all the variances and the diversity within the community across the country? It's because he talked about those bread and butter issues: healthcare, wages, jobs. It's not that complicated. And the real secret is you actually have to message to you have to talk to them. That is the real secret. And that was the primary mover, as Chuck Rocha told us, within the Bernie Sanders campaign, is they actually invested in talking to this community. What is probably not going to win over a lot of voters is what we did see from Joe Biden yesterday. Let's take a look at that.
I just have one thing to say. Hang on here.
All right. There you go. Dance a little bit, Joe. Come on.
I'll tell you, my man. I'll tell you what, if I had the talent of any one of these people, I'd be elected president by acclamation.
It's cringe.
How about you just talk about healthcare instead, Joe?
It's a grandfatherly thing where he's like, "Oh, I just found this new song." I thought it was kind of. All right.
Anyway, that all happened. More Rising for you after this.